The management of this theater thanks you for your patronage.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Are we officially first episode of 2021?
Yes.
Can we at least Happy New Year to all of you who are listening right now, and hopefully you had a better week than we did.
Mm-hmm.
But we are back.
And welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Hopefully people enjoyed those two rewind episodes. We had at least one person on Facebook who was like, "Oh, I've been looking forward to this episode," and I'm like, "That's all right. Everything old is new again."
Yes. So this week we are talking about a new movie, relatively.
Is it new? I feel like I saw it like last year.
Oh, I just watched it last night. So
that's true.
It was
You
new
did.
To me. We're reviewing Soul today.
Soul.
The new Pixar, which is on Disney Plus. What are we doing as our co-feature? This was a delight, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
for
showing your
picking it.
hand right off the bat.
I love to
Come
show my
on.
hand.
Wow. I was going to at least hold back a little bit.
We are doing Mamoru Hosoda's 2018 release, Mirai. And it is, it's also a favorite of mine. So I'm glad to hear there's some positive vibes coming this
Well,
week.
I will triple that because we laughed maniacally through this whole thing.
Really? I
especially-
was choked up quite a bit
Yeah.
during
Well,
this whole
okay,
thing. It was
no,
the
I-
opposite for me.
Well, when you
I
have two
think
kids, I think it affects it a little bit more, and we'll get into it, but it is an absolute delight. So I thank you highly for recommending this. And this is also on Disney Plus, correct?
It's in Netflix right now. If
Netflix,
people
that's where it
want
is.
to watch
Netflix.
it. Mhm.
It's been so long since I've seen these two movies. I barely have any notes.
So I have to wait. I watched Mirai Saturday morning, and then Soul just last night. So it's all fresh.
It's all nice and fresh. That's good. You'll have
And your tears were recently shed. So, because I do feel Pixar somehow always gets you in the end, no matter what.
they do. And they don't need to whitewash it, as Jim refers to it. They really don't.
That spurring on of your tears with the bright screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did have the great beyond. There was quite
That
a lot
is
of light
true.
going
That
on
was,
with that, but it wasn't a manipulation.
Should we get into a little bit of news? It's not even good news. Do we want to start 2021 on bad news? We have to. Well, obviously, before we kicked 2020 to the curb, it took a couple people with them. First and foremost, Dawn Wells, who I'm very upset about. I met her twice, and she was an absolute delight. Anybody who doesn't know who that is Marianne from Gilligan's Island. And as of now, Tina Louise is the sole survivor of the SS Minnow.
Wow.
Crazy.
Do you feel like kids don't really know what Gilligan's Island is because they don't have the same kind of reruns they did when we
Absolutely.
were kids?
Oh yeah, unless you're watching like MeTV,
Yeah.
or you have parents who I mean, my kids know of the Brady Bunch. They've seen enough episodes, but it's not like they sat and they know each episode inside out.
Unless you sit down and make your kids watch it, there's no reference for them. There's nowhere where they can easily see it like we could. Because that wasn't of our generation either, but because of the
correct.
reruns,
Yeah,
we
you
saw it.
figure the first season was black and white.
Mhm.
That was probably 66 maybe the first season. I mean, they milked it for numerous movies after the fact and spin-offs and whatnot. But yeah, I don't think that the younger generation really knows who those people are. And that's unfortunate. But the second person, we also lost Tanya Roberts, not once, but twice.
Is the
Which is
weirdest
just
thing.
the most bizarre. Jim and I are back and forth texting like, wait, she's alive. Oh, no, she's not. I was like, oh.
It gave hope once you found out, no, she's still there. I'm like, so for a day, okay, maybe she's going to fight through. And then you got bad news again.
So unfortunately, that's our 2020.
Sheena has gone to the great
Sheena.
jungle in the sky.
She is with her painted zebra. I do have one other news item. Believe it or not, there's really not a lot of news going on, but Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie that he is producing, that seems to be this in limbo. No one's really sharing any details, and that's fine by me. The less I know, the better. What the man has done for the MCU has just been amazing. So I'll let him go. But it looks like he has tapped Michael Waldron, who was executive producer and writer for Loki. And he was also involved somehow in the writing with the new Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness. And he will be writing this unnamed Star Wars property. So I think that's very exciting. I'm not familiar with the guy's work, obviously, because those two I just mentioned are not even out yet. But obviously something Feige saw in him was enticing enough. And so see what they got. All right, then let's news out and let's get into it.
So Pixar's Soul is our first review of 2021. Again, as we mentioned, this was a direct release on Disney Plus. So it did get a theatrical release in regions of the world where Disney Plus is not available, which would be limited at this point, I would imagine. I think it made something like 7 million, some negligible amount theatrically. And we don't really know success-wise, because I don't think anybody releases these figures, be it Netflix or Disney Plus.
No, but Disney Plus has been dropping numbers as far as I guess they're trying to now compete with Wonder Woman and HBO, and they're all it's all this piss and match about who has their streaming numbers, and apparently this did pretty good as far as people actually watching it on Disney Plus.
Well, Disney Plus has like many, many, many millions more subscribers. So just from that point of view, they're going to have more views.
They can skew it however they want.
And I read something about how it went up 10, 13% since Soul debuted. They're giving that credit in part to Soul. From their polling, lots of parents, mothers specifically, said that they subscribed to Disney Plus to watch Soul specifically. Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that.
Well, that's what they said.
Because it really wasn't on our radar for a long time. It just kind of...
Well, I don't think it was heavily promoted because it just got overshadowed by COVID.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was supposed to drop in the spring, I think. And then they obviously...
No, I don't think it was. Because there was... I don't know if you guys watched, there was a bunch of little behind the scenes things in Disney Plus.
Right.
And in one of them, they mentioned that in the spring, they were like 7 weeks from finishing the film.
You're right. That is correct. Yep, you are right.
Because then they had to suddenly pack up all their stuff and go home.
And they're all working
COVID.
remotely. Yeah. Yeah, there's a great article in the Hollywood Reporter with Pete Docter and his kind of life within Pixar and when he took over for Lasseter, which is very interesting. Iger basically pulled him.
Jeff, you may have a little bit of insight into this, but was Lasseter heavily involved as a director when he was the head of Pixar? Because it seems that Doctor took on the responsibility of being a director of this movie in addition to, and it was a big deal.
He was the director of this movie going into it, but Lasseter, if you look at your history at Disney, I mean, John Lasseter was the face of Pixar. He was everyone's uncle with the loud Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say he was the Hawaiian. He was the Hawaiian shirt. He was
always the jovial guy that was in front of the camera. Just like Disney was touting his new movies or whatever. So Lasseter was so interconnected with Pixar. But from what I understand, obviously we know that there was reports of inappropriateness, and then he stepped aside, and then basically stepped down, and Iger, tapped Pete Docter to replace him, but I guess he was always like the heir apparent, but completely different personalities. Pete Docter is like this very introverted kid who wanted nothing more than like from the age of 8 to just sit at a drawing table and draw cartoons. And now he's running this empire, and he really didn't know, could I fill the shoes of this guy, this again larger than life guy. And Iger said, you don't have to. You don't need to be that person. But, Pete Docter was, he's been there since the 90s. I think he was like the third or fourth animator they plunked off the streets, like right out of Caltech.
I was gonna say, like, Pete Docter was one of their original, and
Mhm.
like one of the original gang of animators. Andrew
Yeah.
Stanton was one of them.
Yep,
And,
yep.
there was like 5 guys that
Mhm.
were there from the beginning who, someday will be like Disney's 9 old men.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
5 old men of Pixar.
Yep. So, I mean, you think, what Pixar, where they came from, because they started out as a Lucasfilm property. Lucasfilm started, it wasn't even referred to as Pixar at the time, but he started this computer graphics department, which was then bought up by Steve Jobs. You're talking like $14.5 billion Pixar has made, 21 Oscars. So.
But it's funny, as we're talking about Pete Docter, I'm sure he got the idea for this movie before the whole thing with Lasseter came about. But it seemed like he was having a career crisis. Like, what should I do next after Inside Out? And this informs this movie quite a bit.
That
so. There's a lot of his personal
angst
stuff going on here. Yeah.
But I think, when movies work the best, when it's semi-autobiographical. This guy's after Inside Out, go back to the Hollywood Reporter article, and he was like, how can I top myself? How can I do anything else? And then he says, like, weeks later, he's like, I still am not, like, I still feel like I have something to say. I
feel like his movies, with the exception of Monsters University, which to me is like one of the few Pixar failures, his movies always tend to be very introspective.
Yes, correct. Especially Inside Out, yeah.
Well, obviously, especially Inside Out, because it's literally about the inside of you. It's literally about your emotions. This is like a pretty existential question that this film is trying to answer. Like, how do you become who you are as a person, starting from when you're a newborn? It is very interesting to see the way that they've interpreted how you become who you are, both like in the way they've chosen to do it in an animated fashion, and also just the idea of like how your personality develops, which, a lot of ways it is kind of an extension of what he was exploring in Inside Out.
Not only thematically, but I think visually, and even with the music cues. Now, the music here was done by Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails.
Which is interesting, yeah.
And Atticus Ross. And which is funny because I didn't mention this yet, but immediately after watching Soul, there was a 3-hour David Bowie tribute concert that was streaming online last night, featuring Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. So it was just a continuation of that.
That's interesting.
But it seems, getting back to Soul, I think that it's closely related to Inside Out, not only because we have Pete Docter, but even down to the music. I think even though Trent Reznor did not do the music for Inside Out, it's kind of similar in theme, the ethereal parts in the afterlife.
The effect of the music, did you guys see the short Paperman?
Yes.
That they did?
Oh, I know.
Yeah, which is probably one of my favorite shorts of all time. And to me, the overall effect of the music was a lot like it is in Paperman. I don't know if you guys remember that short, but I've watched it so many times.
The little paper airplane?
Yes,
right?
Where he's trying to throw the paper airplanes. That's another.
And it's got like those little musical cues to it. Okay.
And that's
been a while, but I do know.
Another crier, by the way.
Well.
Even their shorts make you cry.
Let's not even bring up Bao, because.
Oh, I know, Bao. I was hysterical in the theater watching Bao, because Bao especially connected with me because I've homeschooled my son since he was little, and he was home with me before that, because I've always worked from home. So for me, like, her story, like, having him with her all the time and then losing him, I was like, I can't. And it's like before Incredibles 2, I think. So like the tone is so different.
Yeah, it's a little off there. Wow.
It's funny how they marry a short to the main feature, because often it just seems to be the juxtaposition of what the main feature is about. And like you're saying, in some of these things, you're ready to get up and go, okay, I'm done. Emotionally, I'm finished.
Yeah, I'm wiped right now. Thank you very much. Take my bucket of popcorn and I will leave.
I was actually wondering about that, if they had a short planned for this. They've released a lot of little shorts on Disney Plus, just putting them on the channel, and I don't know if any one of them was initially planned to go with
it.
Soul.
There is, and I cannot remember for the life of me the title. It is on Disney Plus, and it was meant to be in front of Soul, and it starts with a B. So
Is
if
it
you
Burrow?
guys can help me out. Yes.
Is it Burrow?
It was Burrow.
Because we watched that one, we thought it was so cute that the little bunny who's trying to dig a burrow. That was really adorable.
I didn't watch it yet, and I didn't realize that was meant to be the short before Soul. So I have to go back and watch it now. But Soul, the story of Soul is about Joe Gardner, who is a part-time band teacher, and he has bigger aspirations. He's always wanted to be a jazz musician ever since his father introduced him to jazz as a kid. And there are so many allusions, because going into this, if you've watched the trailer, the title Soul, and you've seen the cute little soul characters, this is going to be about death in some way, shape, or form. As the movie opens, there's all these hints up front. I could die a happy man if I could perform with Dorothea Williams. He almost gets hit by a car, 5 times?
Oh, yeah, they played that one for a little.
They're like, oh, he's going to die here. Oh, no, he's going to die here. He's going to die here. Then it actually surprises you when he does die, because he just falls down a manhole, which in any other movie would be just like a comic relief moment.
Right.
But realistically, you fall several feet onto concrete, and then that's enough to do it. It doesn't kill him.
Ed Norton might have stopped us.
He might have stopped him, right? But it doesn't kill him. That's the thing. He's in a coma. So he's in kind of a in-between limbo. He is on his way to the great beyond, and he realizes that this was his big chance on Earth. He finally got this gig with Dorothea Williams. He was on his way, and then this happens to him. So he feels cheated. This cannot be happening. He cannot die on this day. And he jumps off the giant miles-long conveyor belt where all the rest of the souls are moving into the great beyond. And he ends up in the great before, where there's a number of mentors who are helping new souls find their spark.
I found his designs absolutely... I thought they were good. They're like silly string Picasso squiggles, I guess, avatars. I thought it was pretty neat. Skylar pointed out they look very much like the Mac operating system graphic. I'm like, well, that's kind of Picasso-esque, but yeah, I thought it was kind of neat. Jerry, right? Or Jerry? They're all
Jerry.
They're all named Jerry. Yeah.
Except for
Terry,
the accountant, played by Rachel House.
Now, Christina, did you pick up that voice before you knew? Did you know going into this that she was performing this character?
I did not. And as soon as she came on, both me and my son were like, Rachel House.
Because even I recognized that immediately, that voice, because it's very distinct.
And kind of the great thing is she's basically playing a Paula Hall again.
She is. It's like the character from Wilder People is just been transplanted into Soul.
But just in voice form, she's so funny to me. I just think she's brilliant anyway. But just hearing her, and she's so, fixated on her goal, which is to get her count right. Because this soul was supposed to go into the great beyond, Joe Gardner, and he didn't. By the way, when all the souls were standing in line to go to the great beyond, my son said it was like Carousel in Logan's Run.
Oh, jeez. That's a good call on that one.
But yeah, it's like the tone of the movie then shifts a little bit, because you've gone from this real world into this very, very stylized world. And Joe pretends to be a mentor, thinking that he can get back to Earth and his body and the fulfillment of his dream, and that he has to mentor this problematic new soul named 22,
who's been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
An old new soul. And the one of the great comedic bits of this is showing all the previous famous mentors that have given up on 22.
And poor 22.
Tina Fey, of course, is so perfect. I love the thing where he asks her, why do you sound like a middle-aged white lady? And she's like, I just use this voice to annoy people.
It's funny. My wife picked up on her immediately.
You know, she's got like everything she needs except this one little element, her spark. And Joe is desperate to help her find her spark, which he thinks is like her passion or her purpose in life, so that she can, you know, go down to earth. But
and the spark is represented on a little badge that she's got. And it's the one missing piece on this badge. You know, and that you call back to Up as well.
Yeah, Russell's sash of badges.
Joe comes upon a scheme here because 22 at the start of this doesn't want to get a spark necessarily.
I think she
doesn't want to.
Got a good gig going here. Yeah.
She's fine right where she is here in the Great
Earth
Before.
sucks. I don't want to go down there.
So Joe comes upon this idea. Okay, if you don't want your badge, then I'll take it and I'll use that as a way to get back to my body and go play with Dorothea Williams tonight. So that becomes the driving force of both of these characters, and they run into a character called Moonwind. You know, I recognize the voice from somewhere.
But until the end credits.
From the Graham Norton show.
But that character was great. Part of the fun was me trying to deduce who the voice was, and I couldn't do it.
That's it.
Moonwind is very bizarre. He's a mystic that is alive. They're not actually in the Great Before, Moonwind, but they're in the Zone, which is an area for lost souls.
Or souls who are in the zone. So like
In the
musicians,
zone.
literally,
right?
yes.
So like musicians who are playing and have like sort of forgotten where they are, or writers who are writing, or you know, dancers who are dancing. Just the idea that you reach a transcendent state when you're,
which I thought was really neat.
Right.
I thought that was a really nice. There's a lot going on in these scenes.
So Moonwind and his team, they can put themselves in that state and get into the zone. So Joe and 22 find Moonwind, and with his help, they come up with a scheme to get back to Earth. This opens up the very comedic middle part of the film where Joe and 22 both get back to Earth, but because Joe's in the hospital with a therapy cat on his lap,
Mr. Mittens,
when they actually arrive, it's 22 that's in Joe's body, and it's Joe that's in the cat's body.
Yeah, and this threw me. I had no idea they were going here.
No,
with
neither
this
did I.
Freaky Friday body swapping, but it was played for great comedic effect.
Here is the crux: is that as they're on Earth, 22 has an epiphany that she does want to find her spark, and it's Joe's body that's helping her determine this, and she doesn't want to go back anymore. So of course it couldn't be as cut and dry as Joe just getting back into his body and playing and then it's a happy ending. We have to help 22 in some way. I was not sure where this was going, because you think to yourself, okay, Joe is a band teacher at the beginning. Then he falls into this job of being a mentor, even though he's doing it for his own purposes. So I thought it was going to Joe finding his true purpose being a teacher. You make your own conclusions where the movie is going. It's not necessarily where it is or what they're trying to convey.
And the whole thing with 22 being inside Joe's body is that she becomes amazed by little things, right?
Yes.
She loves food, like any kind
the pizza.
of food.
The whole scene with the pizza was great.
She becomes transfixed watching a busker in the subway. She sees a leaf, you know, a seed falling from a tree.
Yeah, the helicopters. Yeah.
She just becomes sort of amazed by all these little things in life. When Terry finally does catch them, because Terry has been relentlessly following them like the Terminator.
Yeah, but which is funny because there really is no bad guy in this movie, but Terry is about as close as they come, but only because Terry needs to rectify. Listen, I'm married to an accountant. I know these numbers don't line up at all. So Terry was on a mission, regardless of what Joe actually had intended.
But right. Joe does have a point, because 22 now has this obsession with humanity and life and getting a spark because of Joe, because she's living through his eyes. There's a realization there that Joe has a lot to offer as he is. And I also love the fact, like Christina was saying, how there's the busker in the subway. And also she ends up talking one of his students out of quitting their instrument. And she is amazed by the student playing as well. This is very unexpected for 22, which is why she tries to run away when she realizes that, no, she maybe doesn't want to go back.
Right. So what ends up happening is that Terry catches them. They go back. It turns out that 22 did get her spark and she's ready to go to Earth. She has her badge is complete.
Yep.
But at the last second, in a state of both resentment and insecurity, she throws her badge at Joe and runs away. So Joe ends up taking the badge, goes to Earth, has his night with Dorothea Williams, and then realizes that he doesn't feel as fulfilled as he thought he would, having achieved this dream. And then he's like, wait, I've got to fix this. So he goes back to try to help 22, and 22 has become a lost soul because she's become fixated on the Earth and she can't get there. When Joe tries to help her, to talk to her, she kind of becomes this big monster and eats him. And he goes inside her and he sees all of the people who have told her that she's not enough. All the people who have said, you can't do this. You're not good enough. There's something wrong with you. And she's really taken this literally hundreds of years of mentors saying there's something wrong with you and internalized it. And Joe has now come to the realization that it's not your passion, it's not your job, it's not something specific that gives you your spark. It's that he's forgotten to be amazed by life. And she is amazed by life, and that is her spark.
And I love the fact that Joe finds his own way back into the zone by using the artifacts that 22 has collected. He lays them all out on the piano, and without Moonwind's help or anybody else's help, he gets back to the zone to find her himself.
And it's a very beautiful moment, and this is when everybody's crying, right? We're passing the box of tissues across the couch. Because he realizes life is made up of moments. It's not one big thing. That's really what the movie is about. It's not about this one big thing will define you.
Yep.
Now, there were several alternate endings that were kind of thrown out there. What happens is that 22 gets her badge back from Joe, and then she goes to Earth, and she's born on Earth, and you don't see really what happens to her after that. So it's just left up to you. And Joe is stuck there in the great before, and he gets on the conveyor belt. He's going into the great beyond, and one of the Jerrys comes over to him and says that, you've done such a commendable job with 22. We're going to give you another chance. Well, what about Terry? Is everybody's concern, right? Oh, don't worry. We've taken care of Terry. We've spoken with Terry. And really what they've done, on her abacus, they've just moved one little dial. They've distracted Terry so they could move the abacus.
All it takes.
So Joe gets another shot at life himself. And as Christina was saying, he is going to live life to the fullest and enjoy every minute.
We don't really know what that is because he walks out the door and then this is it. Brand new world.
Now, from what I was saying before, I was thinking that it was going to move in the direction where Joe realizes that his spark, that his purpose is to be a teacher. So, and one of the endings that they were going to go with is that Joe decided to stay in the great before and be a mentor. They decided that it would be in the best interest of the audience to leave it to your imagination as to what happens with Joe and what happens with 22. There was also talk about maybe converging their storylines years later so you could see them meet up on Earth, but again they decided not to,
that's
to
a
be
little
so literal.
too Sully Boo at the end of Monsters Inc. where he comes to the door years later.
Are you kidding me? That's my favorite moment in that.
I'm not saying it's not a great moment. I'm just saying it does echo that whole reunion after all is said and done. Yeah, this is not a kids movie by any means. I don't know if younger kids will get it or be as connected to some of the characters.
I watched it with my son, and he, like with most Pixar movies or Disney movies, a kid can watch it on one level, and an adult would have an entirely different experience, depending on the age and what have you. So my son enjoyed it.
See, my son is old enough to sniffle. like
Yeah.
to realize
Mhm.
the implications of the movie. So yeah, it was like we were all just sobbing. The only other time that's really happened was Coco,
Oh, jeez.
where we were all a mess. You know, usually I'm a crier. I cry for everything. Sometimes my husband might like shed one or two tears. You know, my son sometimes cries, but like we were all just in a state after we watched this movie.
And I love the blue tones of everything in terms of the zone, the great beyond, the great before. It's just amazing to me how they weren't originally going to go with a jazz musician. That was not part of the plot to
Story,
begin
yeah.
with, because it is such an integral point of the movie that the way it is now, because the whole implications with the jazz theme, like I was thinking about the Blue Note jazz label. So I think thematically, the color blue is used to great effect here.
Sure, if you think about like two of the greatest jazz albums of all time, right? Miles Davis, Kind of Blue,
Yeah.
and John Coltrane's Blue Train.
There
You
go.
know,
Yeah.
so like you definitely think of blue when you think of jazz.
And the one thing we didn't talk about, which was you do get a little bit of backstory up front there when he goes to see his mother, and she's kind of downplaying this whole dream of his. You know, I'm assuming that this guy is like in his mid 50s. Do we get any kind
He's
of
middle-aged.
middle age?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, mom's like, all right, you got to give it up. It's enough. So,
But
and that's very disheartening. And mom was,
yeah, but the other part of her is like, you'll have insurance, you'll have pension, like
oh
you'll
yeah,
have
no, right,
stability.
because they offered him tenure at the school as full-time band leader. And the one
Right.
thing I loved, which was the opening Disney fanfare with the
Yes.
and the whole thing. And you're like, what the hell is this? And then you realize it's his band playing the Disney theme, but it just sounds horrific. And I thought that was clever. I thought that was really neat, but I didn't pick up on it initially. I'm like, ooh, I don't know what's going on here. There's a lot of nice moments. It's very
There are.
beautiful to look at, like Jim said, that, you know, the color schemes and everything, and you do get invested.
Tidbit: it's the first Pixar not to feature John Ratzenberger's voice
That is true. I did read that, although he does have a cameo
as an animated character.
There's a character that looks like him, and they're like, we're not going to tell you where he is. You got to go find him.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't know that, because I did not want to be preoccupied
Now you can go back
looking
and
for
look.
John Ratzenberger.
You
Yeah.
just Google it now. Someone's already found him and took a screen grab. There he is. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, they had every intention of releasing this in the theaters, and I think that it probably would have had even more weight. But we got it at home. So
Sometimes I just think the really unfortunate thing about being at home is that, you know, no matter how much you try to sort of block off other things, like
yeah, there's too many
there's
distractions. Yeah.
like there's noise, or there's your neighbors, or you know, you hear something outside, or you know, you just don't have that like really closed off feeling of sort of being in the moment with your experience of the film and with your emotions. I mean, not that necessarily this film needs more emotional impact, but you know, there is just something different. I can't even tell you how much I miss going to the movie.
I know. We talk about it all the time. And then there's other people like, you can't tell me you miss going to the theater. Well, yeah, I do. So,
Yeah.
I love everything about the experience of going to theater. I just love like the whole process of it, like buying your ticket and
Yes.
planning the outing, and then like being like, oh, should we do something before? Should we do something after? You know, like it's a whole thing. And then you go to the film and you get your popcorn, you watch the previews. I don't know. I like everything about it.
Oh, you're making me miss it even more now.
All your senses are engaged. Even the smell of a movie theater lobby is unique in itself. And the fact that when you go in there, you sit down and you are captive to this director, to this film. And like Christina was saying, you cannot pause to get up and get a snack. I'd like to think that no scene in any film is wasted, that it all means something. And you don't want to miss anything when you're in the theater. You are completely invested. And yes, it's very easy to get distracted at home.
Well, there's just something about the unbroken experience of the narrative, because especially in a movie, like even more than other forms of storytelling, they're trying to build towards something. And if you pause, then you're breaking that tension.
momentum, yeah.
You know, you're breaking that feeling of building toward something. And it's just unfortunate that obviously that we're in this horrific pandemic, but like that we've really lost this communal experience of going to the movies and all experiencing the same emotions together, you know, because I do think you can feel the way other people are feeling about the film,
Oh yeah.
you know, while you're in there.
And sitting with an audience, I think the power of that enhances your own feelings about a film. I don't want to say validates, because that's, you know, you should have your own opinion regardless. But,
Yeah.
you know, if you're getting the sense that if you're loving this and other people around you are loving this as well, then it's a communal experience.
Yeah, I agree. I just think there's something about seeing a film in theaters that like you lose when you're at home. I really hope that we can all get healthier this year and we can all go back to the movies together.
Yes, we have quite a few films that we've been waiting to see, as we're going to discuss in our confessional today. So hopefully 2021, we will get out there and see them. So what kind of buckets would we give for Soul?
For me, I'm going to say sometimes it's so hard to distinguish like how you really feel from the movie from like how emotional you got about it, but I'm going to say it's like a 4.5. I don't love it as much as I love some other Pixar films, but it's so good. It's hard to give it less for me.
I would easily say 4.25.
I would say probably 4. It's a very good Pixar film, but there are some that struck me much harder than this one did. But still, it is a very worthy movie. And if you haven't seen it, you've got Disney Plus. Get on there today. Press play.
Yeah. Did you ever go to the movie theater and be the only person laughing? There's been a couple I'm in where I'm like, am I watching the same movie as you people? Because that was funny.
Okay, let's go to the concession stand and we will be right back.
Okay.
The time is now, the time is here. Now's the time for a bite of cheer. A tasty life where the price is right. Well, look at here, you'll dig the sight. The moment's handy for a piece of candy. Just name your brand, they're all so grand. Hey, what do you think of a nice cool drink? Or a big box filled with a popcorn thrill? Let your taste buds meet with an ice cream treat. Refresh yourselves, it's time to eat. So come on, folks, let's join the band as we all head for the refreshment stand.
Okay, and we are back. Christina, you hadn't seen Soul yet, correct? When you put this out there as a suggestion for us to pair with Soul.
So my idea was that, based on the trailer that I'd seen for Soul, was that it was kind of had portal fantasy elements, right? Where a person goes through a door into another world and then they experiencing something life-changing. And I thought, you know, that's kind of what happens in Mirai. And I really wanted to... I thought that they would pair well on that basis. Plus, I'm always looking for an excuse to make you guys watch more Hosoda movies, because last year I made you guys watch Summer Wars.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm such a huge fan of his work. I really strongly feel that if you love Miyazaki, who's probably the best known anime director in the US, then I think that people really need to discover Hosoda and get to know his work, because he works sort of a lot on the same level, where he has very personal stories that have these fantastic elements but are sort of ultimately about people. It's interesting because this movie ended up pairing even better than I thought it would with Soul, because Soul's, you know, kind of about recognizing your connections to the world and like the world around you, and Mirai is about recognizing your connections to your past, present, and future, right? Your loved ones and your family. So I think it's it ended up pairing a lot better than I thought it would.
I'm curious, did Mirai, is that before or after Summer Wars?
It's after. Mirai only came out 2 years ago. In fact, it was nominated for an Oscar in 2019. It lost to Spider-Verse. But the Summer Wars came out in 2009.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Summer Wars is
much earlier.
Much earlier. The plot of the film seems fairly simple, which is that Kun, who's a 4-year-old boy, his mom's having a new baby, and he's sort of initially fascinated with the baby, but then he realizes that his parents don't have time for him anymore, because they're so wrapped up in the newborn, which if you've ever had a newborn, they definitely suck the life out of you.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the general plot of the movie, but then throughout the film, Kun has these experiences in their yard with this tree where he sees a future version of his sister. He meets his great-grandfather. He meets the human embodiment of their
Of his
dog.
who was kind of frightening. I thought I was a little creeped out by the human embodiment of the dog. You know what
Yeah.
it made me? It reminded me of is your book Alice. The
Okay.
because I was getting these pictures in my head of the white rabbit, and so that's kind of what creeped me out, was knowing that about Alice. But I'm going down another path there.
But the great thing about the movie, I think, is the way the relationships in the family feel really real. They feel very true
Really?
to life.
Especially if you have two kids my kids were only 2 years apart from each other, but yeah, this is where my wife and I were laughing maniacally. where I did see quite a few IMDb reviews where people were like, this kid is just unredeemable and he's unlikable, and I'm like, but he's a 4-year-old. He's a 4-year-old, and so to that point, there's one point where he actually goes to strike his sister.
He does strike her. He does strike her.
But then he goes to do it a second time, and I screamed, "Didn't the kid learn anything?" And my wife just turns to me and she goes, "He's 3 years old." And we all just started laughing because it's so true.
When he does hit her, you're not expecting it because you're thinking you're in a safe space with an animated movie, so it's a surprise, but you don't hold it against the character because he is young, and that's what would happen. This
is
right.
You see 2 years of training all undone when a baby comes home, and all of a sudden it's like the dog even said it. He's like, I don't feel sorry for you. I was top dog until you came along, and, so he knew all too well. You get replaced, and I spent the first year and a half home with my daughter. So to see the dad exhausted and just the parents just in general, the mom going back to work and the dad's trying to lock everything down. The neighborhoods the women are like, "You're such a great dad," and then the wife just berates him. He's like, "Stop playing that good dad card."
It's interesting because she says, I'm not going to be able to do everything like I did before, which implies that before, she was really carrying a lot of the load.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to figure it all out now, and she's back to work, and he's home with 2 kids, also trying to
work,
do freelance. And, the stories, they feel so real if you've experienced even a portion of this, the struggles of the parents to adjust to the second child, the struggles of the dad to learn his new responsibilities, the struggles of the mom who's worried that she won't be a good mom, and she's upset with herself for being impatient and for yelling. I mean, as a parent, how many times have you snapped at your kid because you're upset about something else, and then you're like, why did I do that?
Right.
Yesterday.
And for the dad, he even admits that he wasn't present. For Kun. And it's almost like Mirai is his first child in many ways. He tries to teach Kun how to ride the bike. You ask yourself, where's the baby? Where's the baby while he's doing this? She's sitting with a stranger. Okay.
Yep, there you go. We got it covered. We're good.
Yeah.
Everything about it feels so real. Obviously the way Kun responds, he's really upset because he's always gotten his mom's attention. His mom's trying to feed the baby, and he's like, I want milk. And the dad brings him milk, and he's like, Mom, I want milk. Not Dad, I want Mom to bring me the milk. I want Mom to bring me the
mom's
banana.
attention is now being taken away.
And people who think the kid is being bad, no, he's being a kid. Kids have
obviously
feelings.
they don't have children.
Yeah.
This
kid is actually better behaved than I think a lot of real 4-year-olds would.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'd be pooping my pants. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Kids have feelings, you know, and at that age, they don't necessarily know what to do with them.
Mm.
So, like, and for him, Hosoda talked about how one of the things he wrote, one of the impetuses to write this film, first of all, was his reaction of his own son when they brought home a new baby. But also this idea that throughout life we lose love, right? You have relationships and you break up, like your parents pass away, whatever. And he's like, this is like your first experience of losing love, you know, when your parents' attention is somewhere else. And that he really wanted to explore this idea. And the way Kun acts, he just seems like such a real kid. Like the way he sleeps, like with his butt up in the air and no blankets on him.
Yep.
Like when he's putting the crackers on Mirai's face.
Oh.
Yes.
Little fish crackers.
Which is a nice callback when you actually meet the older version of Mirai.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the portal aspects, because
Yeah.
this is just as a nice
it's
bridge
weird.
into that.
It really kind of all of a sudden goes in a different place.
Now, the father is an architect, so this house
I love this
beautiful.
house. This
Me
house,
too.
I was going to bring it up, which is well designed. It's got nice story flow, you know, back and forth between the kitchen and his little playroom.
and there's a courtyard
got the
in the middle of
courtyard,
the
and that's
house,
where
and
the
this is
trees-
where all the magic happens. This is
Yeah.
where whenever Kun is upset and he goes by himself to this courtyard, this seems to be his happy place. That's where he storms off to. This is where he sees these other fantastical characters, the older version of a sister, the human version of their dog. And so this is where the portals take place. It's all in this courtyard.
And the great thing about it is there's not really like an explanation. There's not like, oh, like magic is happening now. It just is. And I think
Right.
it acts a lot of the ways that kids think about magic. You know what I mean? Like where they're very matter of fact about it. So of course he goes into the yard and he starts talking with this strange man who says, you know, I used to be the prince of the house. Like I was coddled and adored. And then you came along
Yeah.
and I was given discounted food.
Yes.
Can you get the good food again? Tell your
At,
dad
le-
I
at
want the good
least,
food again.
at least Kun redeems himself in that he gets the dog the good food again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think, you know, it's interesting because it's not that he, you know, hates his sister. It's because there's a couple of really cute scenes where he like tries to tell her the story in the storybook, and then he
Mhm.
like keeps bringing her his toys, like he's
Yeah.
putting stuff in the crib with her.
Yep.
But he doesn't know how to interact with her because she's just a baby. Because that's the thing, parents are always like, you're gonna have a baby sister and you'll have someone to play with, and then
Yeah.
they bring home this
Yeah,
little
you can't play with them. You can't
this
play with
little inert thing.
them.
you
He,
know?
he
3
cannot
years.
he cannot relate to her on a one-on-one basis
Yeah.
at this point in time. So
Here's a mint action figure. You can't take it out of the package. You can just look at it.
Right.
But talking about the crackers on her face, because you know he resorts to just doing whatever he wants to with her because she can't interact back.
I love that first scene. She tickles him and it's meant to be like kind of a torture. And he's like, do it again.
Right.
You know?
Because he's
and-
getting attention.
Yeah. And also
Yeah.
because now he's interacting with her like a sister.
Right.
You know, except now she's being the older sister, because in this scenario she's a teenager. But I love the whole scene where Yuko, Mirai, and Kun are united to put away the dolls. The girls.
Yeah, I was going to say, she comes back with a mission that she needs these dolls to be removed because
And
every
she-
day that they're left out is another year she won't get married,
Right.
kind of a thing. And he's
Right.
like, why? Do you like somebody? And she's like, no. So they're trying to do it, you know, in front of the dad who's working on his
Right.
computer.
So which begs the question, you know, this may or may not be in Kun's head because it's not Kun that's
Physically,
putting
right,
away
they
the
are
dolls.
physically,
Yeah.
Oh, I took it
And-
for what it was. Yeah, I don't. There's a nice point, and you know, you talk about this tree being this portal, and it literally is like their family tree, because at one point you see it kind of glowing, and you get the little genealogy brackets that replace the bark as the graphic going up the tree, and I thought that was a really neat touch.
there's a lot of nice touches too, where like when the teenage Mirai is there, the father thinks that the baby's gone. Do you remember?
Yes,
He's
yeah.
like, he looks down at the crib and he's like,
Where'd you go?
where did she go? And then the teen Mirai disappears again, and then the baby is suddenly, you look and you see she's just
Slid down.
slumped in her little carrier, but which to me is like, put the strap on her. You don't like just put
I
a
know,
newborn.
right? They do have harnesses.
You don't just put a newborn.
Can you
in-
keep its head up? There she is, just laying on the floor. All right, she's good.
But that adds to the question of whether or not this is really happening, because they can't exist in the
Together.
same place
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, because you don't see the dog, right? Whenever the human embodiment of the dog is there, the actual dog is gone. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's everything about it. Again, it just feels real. Like first, Kun goes in and tries to ask his dad to put away the dolls, and he's like, "Dad, the dolls." And his dad's like, Like he's working. He's not really thinking. He's going, "Yeah, Like he's in a different place, and it just feels like he feels like a real dad. It feels like a real relationship.
Yeah, not perfect by any means.
Mhm.
I actually believe that is why my daughter draws, because I would bring her into the studio with me, and whatever I was doing is what she was doing. So.
And so as the film goes on, there's some really, basically like Kun he's sort of learning to accept Mirai, but not immediately. Like that's the great thing, is that he has to take a long time to kind of come around to this idea that he's her older brother. But he has like some amazing experiences, and one of my favorites is when he goes back in time and meets his great grandfather.
Love it. Absolutely loved it. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, which I think at some point we all kind of fantasize about that. I actually have a picture of my grandfather, not my great grandfather, sitting on an Indian head motorbike.
Mhm.
And you're just like, who is that guy? Like, that's not the guy I ever knew, but he looked pretty cool.
See, and I love the sequence where he goes and meets his mother as a kid.
Yeah, that was a fun. Yeah.
That's a great one, because you see how his mother becomes frustrated with him because he's the way she was.
Correct.
Yeah.
When she was a kid.
And she was worse. She was worse than
Yes.
him.
Yeah. The mess they make in that house.
She feared no recriminations whatsoever.
And he keeps saying, "Won't you get yelled at?" And she's like, "Don't worry."
And then mom comes home. Oh crap. She's home. It is very charming, very nice.
So this is what was, this is the sob-inducing stuff, or all these scenes where he's going back and you realize that's his mom, you realize that's his great-grandfather. And then especially what gets me is because you get little stories from the present day family, like how the great-grandfather wooed the great-grandmother by beating her in a race.
In a race, yeah.
And you saw that his leg was injured in the war, and the fact that she allowed him to win.
That's a keeper. That's a keeper right there.
Start the waterworks right there.
Oh yeah, if you weren't crying when that happened, I don't know, man. You don't have a heart.
Wow.
But it's so it just sort of like it slowly culminates in this idea that you're connected to everybody who's come before you. And that your connections now will make something for the future. So there's this sort of final, almost climactic moment, right, where they're supposed to be going camping, and he wants his yellow pants, and he can't have them because they're in the dryer.
Yep.
And
here, put on the blue ones. No.
Right. And when he takes the pants off, I'm like, I have seen this happen.
Right.
It's like, I don't want to wear this. Like, down the pants go. And so he goes into the yard. He says, "I'm running away." Right.
Right. Which every kid does. He runs to a tub.
And he goes out of the tub, and he thinks everybody's left him. His parents are just downstairs packing the car, but he thinks that they've all left without him. And then he has another moment where he goes into the tree and he actually sees, although he doesn't know it, a future version of himself who chastises him, who's like, you're going to your grandparents and you're going to go camping and you're going to see fireflies and you're going to make happy memories. Like, what's more important, your yellow pants or your happy memories? And he says the pants.
That's a 4-year-old. He wants his pants. You tell me about memories. I can't remember what I did yesterday.
And
my sister.
This train comes and his older self says, don't get on that train. And he's like, I'm getting on the train.
I'm getting on the train. Tell me what to do.
Right. And it's funny because it is sort of, if you've watched The Mandalorian, it's just like when, Grogu. Mando tells Yoda not to touch the baby Yoda, Grogu, not to touch the buttons, right? Of course I'm going to touch the buttons because you told me not to.
Right.
So he gets on the train and he goes to the station, and the station is huge and there's tons of
this animation is just off the charts, by the way. It's phenomenal.
Isn't the reason he gets on the train, doesn't he say that he wants to run away?
Yeah.
And that's why he's getting on the train, and in his future self is telling me, you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
and that's like symbolically running away, is getting on the train.
Yeah.
So he goes into the station and it's huge and there's thousands of people. And he realizes that he's alone. He wants his mom and dad.
I want my mom.
And he's looking around, and all of a sudden there's these announcements like, there is a lost child, and he thinks it's me.
It's him,
right?
Yeah, no.
It's me. They're gonna say my name. No, they say some other name, like your parents.
And then you see them get reunited with their parents one by one, and he's just kind of like, ugh.
And he's like, my mom's not here, my dad's not here. And so he goes to the station attendant, who, by the way, was designed by this husband and wife who are children's book authors who write under the name Tupuru Tupura. And it's actually a paper cutout, the station attendant, that they animated.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought, okay, that's pretty wild, because it really is kind of a neat, like you would just think it was like CG.
I thought it made me think of Hugo, that character.
I know. Well, the whole train sequence in general, Hugo.
So he goes to the station attendant, who says, this is the lost and found. And he says, I'm lost.
There you go. Yeah.
And they say, well, okay, we can call somebody in your family. What are their names? But he doesn't know the name of his mom.
Yes.
Yeah, mom and dad.
And he doesn't know the name of his dad. And he doesn't know, he tries to say Yuko, but they're like, we can't call a pet.
Right.
But the thing that you notice is that he doesn't say Mirai. Right? He doesn't say her name, because he's still at this point where he doesn't want to admit that he's her older brother, that she's part of his family. And they say, well, if you can't find a parent, then you have to go into the pit and you have to take, this black Shinkansen that looks like a wolf. It's very frightening looking. It's such Kun reveres Shinkansen, so for him to see this very terrifying version of this train is a lot for him. So he has to go down to the pit, and the doors open and it tries to suck him into the train. And then he manages to sort of wrest himself free, and he looks over and he sees Mirai, little Mirai, like crawling along, and she's about to get sucked in, and he runs to her and he protects her.
Yep.
And he says, that he's her older brother. And that's
do the waterworks.
Because of that, because he's admitted that she's his sister and that, they belong to each other, then future Mirai comes and rescues him and returns him home.
It's a lot.
It's such and it's like, because that's when you see a lot of these little moments that Jim was talking about, like the scene with the great-grandfather and the great-grandmother. You see Kun's own father, who was like very sickly as a child, who was unable to ride a bike, and who like struggled every day to try to ride a bike by himself. It's just an incredibly beautiful movie about like the connections between family. And then you have this nice little coda with the parents who are like, we're doing okay. We're not perfect, but we're okay. we're gonna figure this out. And I think it's really, really nice. So, but they, you guys are like so silent. Are you
I
crying?
know.
When you think about it, it makes you cry.
Yeah.
Because Hosoda really wants things to look good and like be accurate. They had a real architect design the house, which is, as you mentioned, it's incredibly beautiful. It has such a
Yeah.
great design. It's like kind of house I would want to live in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the house
Uh,
grows. In
Yeah, you see that
between
at the beginning.
them
Yeah.
having, Kun and then Mirai, the house grows along with the family.
Hosoda wanted, so he talked to, I watched a documentary with him. He talked about Kun, loving the Shinkansen. So he went out and found the designer of Kun's favorite bullet trains and then asked him to design the black
Ooh.
Shinkansen.
Huh.
So
That's cool.
Yoshitoko Kameda, he designed the bullet train, the black bullet train. And there's a great little segment in the documentary where he shows his designs and how he came up with everything and how he decided to put fur on the train, all this kind of stuff. They just really wanted things to feel sort of as real as they can in a fantasy.
To that point, I was going to just mention how impressive the overhead shots are of the entire city.
Yep.
In the little moving cars, and
Yeah, you're right.
And a lot of the animation, and they may have based it on reality, seemed like it was a real setting. In some, not everything, but in some scenes, it looked like it was a real setting that these characters were living in.
Yeah.
It was so beautifully realized.
Detailed, yeah.
And one thing is that this is probably going to be one of the last films actually that does this, but they there is some CG in this, which you can sort of tell at certain points, but they're still a hand-drawn company. All the backgrounds are paint on paper.
Oh.
If you watch the documentary about the making of the film, you see animators at drafting tables with actual paper doing the keyframe animation, for the characters.
Going old school.
And Hosoda said, it's a dying art. And
yeah, which is sad, but it's so clean. It's so, it really is impressive. Like I said, you get into that train sequence and you just think of all the moving parts that are going on right there.
And they do incorporate CG, but they incorporate it in such a way that it doesn't feel like the CG is intruding.
Right.
Which I think is nice and I still like that hand-drawn feel.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, to Jim's point, when you get those overhead shots, they probably are built on a 3D a CG frame, but then, each panel or each side of the house is probably hand drawn and dropped on there, because it does have 3D elements as the camera pans over, you do get changed perspective and whatnot. So.
And what we didn't talk about, there's a scene that made me jump in here, is when he sees his mother in the train station, but it's not his mother. It's the witch from the book that he had.
Oh, yeah, that's the one thing.
He jumped out of the chair when she turned around.
He keeps referring to his mother as a witch a couple times.
Yeah.
He turns into that.
Oni Baba. Oni Baba. Oni Baba.
The Witch and the Mustache. I wish I had that book as a kid.
And that book was also designed by this husband-wife couple that I mentioned earlier, who are children's book artists.
What'd you say their name was?
So they work under the name, it's Tupara.
Yeah.
Tupera. It's twice.
Okay.
Maybe you can explain, what was that cake that they were eating? It seemed to be half gelatin and half cake.
Oh, you've never been to a Japanese bakery, huh?
No, I know. There's very few Japanese bakeries in Highland.
There's some cake. You see some cakes like that. There's quite a few Japanese bakeries. No, I wouldn't say quite a few, but I've been to more than one in the Chicago area. And it's like a cake with a gelatin and there's candy inside.
Oh.
Yeah. You would not believe some of the amazingly intricate things I've seen in Japanese bakeries. Even just like the regular sweets, when my son was younger, he still likes this one bakery, and there would be donuts like shaped like turtles, or crabs, that had different kinds of fillings inside, or it's like a little panda face. You're not going to just find like sort of regular
Cookies.
regular stuff. Even the fillings in a lot of the pastries are like a lot of times not what you expect. One time my husband got a potato roll and he was like, he thought it would be like potato flavor like in the
Right.
in the dough. It had a potato in it. If you ever
Sounds like
have
we're missing out, Jim.
if you ever
Yeah,
have
I
the
guess so.
chance, you should go to, if you are ever like down in the city or something and you have a chance to go to a Japanese bakery, you should, because it's a very like unique, wonderful experience.
So what kind of buckets would we give?
I'm going to give it
Mirai?
4.25. I'm going to match it right with Soul.
I would say the same. I would give it the same rating as I gave Soul 4.
Yeah, this was very delightful.
So I'm also going to give this 4.5, but again, only because there are Hosoda movies that I like more. And you guys haven't even seen them yet.
No, no.
I really, really want to recommend to our listeners that if you like anime and you like, especially if you're a Miyazaki fan, you need to go out and find Mamoru Hosoda's films. Summer Wars, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time,
Yep.
Mirai, Wolf Children, which is unbelievably gorgeous, The Boy and the Beast. Please go look for his films. You will love them. He always has these kind of supernatural / fantasy elements, but that are really grounded in people and in relationships. I just think that he makes really beautiful, like very personal films. And I just wish more people, especially in the US, would like sort of catch on to his work.
So for
Cool.
anybody that's going to be searching this on Netflix, it's spelled Mirai.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the actual Japanese name is Mirai no Mirai, which means Mirai of the future.
Spoiler.
Right, because her name means future.
Perfect segue to our confessional this week.
Oh, that's beautifully done.
Confessionals.
What we are asking is, what movies are we most looking forward to in 2021 that were postponed from 2020?
So that would be all of them. Is that all of them?
Like, all of them except for 3, 4, maybe.
Oh, I don't know. I can tell you right now, I cannot wait for Candyman.
That's my answer.
Oh, is it? I was kidding, by the way.
This is a quick confessional this week.
I'm kidding. That was not mine.
That is
All
mine.
right, so go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
I was
Talk
like,
about showing your hand.
Wow.
I thought, oh gosh, Jeff is on board with me. I convinced him.
No.
Yes, that is the one movie that I am looking forward to more than anything now.
We got to wait half the year, right? It doesn't come out until August.
I know. And this happens a lot, like where if there's a film I really want to see, I'll watch the preview. My son will watch with me, and if we really want to see the movie, we'll watch the preview over and over. I can't tell you how many times we've watched the preview for Candyman. I cannot wait. I'm so excited because it seems like it connects very strongly, to the original. And also, just visually, it looks great. It's set in Chicago again.
Of course.
So it's not
How could
necessarily
it
a
not be?
reboot, right? It's not a reboot.
It's not
I
a
know we
reboot.
have talked
It's a
continuation.
sequel.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you remember the little baby
Yep.
who was kidnapped in Candyman by Candyman.
Yes. Yeah.
And in this film, he's grown up.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I do like that.
It's a crime
kinda
that this
like-
didn't come out when it should have, because we would have been primed to see
Yeah.
it after covering the
Right.
original Candyman.
Well, I guess we just have to watch it again.
I don't know if I.
And but I'm really, really excited about this film. I'm very excited to see what Nia DaCosta does with the story, and it just looks like it's going to be amazing. So that's the one film I'm looking forward to more than anything.
I'm gonna guess that Jim and I probably have our top one. As the
Yeah,
same.
just look at the caricature that you drew of me for our, and you'll know
Yes.
what I'm looking forward to the most in 2021 that was postponed. Godzilla versus Kong, is that yours as well?
It is. I do have 2 other ones, so I'll do a secondary backup. But May 21st. So, from what I understand, Warner Brothers is on the edge of brokering a deal with Legendary, because Legendary was not very happy that they announced that it was going to drop on Disney Plus. I mean, HBO Max. Unbeknownst to any of the producers or people involved in this movie. And so Legendary actually had, I think it was a $2.25 million offer from Netflix that Warner Brothers said, yeah, wait a minute. Looks like Warner Brothers may be paying Legendary for this.
So, and at this point, it's they're going down that Wonder Woman 84 route, where they're looking at the moment a simultaneous theatrical and HBO Max release.
Yeah, so we can only hope that I do not want to watch this on television.
No.
I need to see this on the big screen, so we have until May to figure all this crap out and get these movie theaters back open, because this is going to be a spectacle.
So what's your backup?
Spider-Man 3 comes in December.
But was that postponed, or has that always been a 2021?
I think it was. I don't know. Did I know that we were supposed? Fine. Then Raya and the Last Dragon. Let's go with that one.
We have strict rules of golf here. Strict rules of golf.
Apparently. I'm going to ask for a mulligan.
But Raya is also going to be released on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to throw out a backup as well. Last Night in Soho, which is the new Edgar Wright movie with Anya Taylor-Joy and Matt Smith, Doctor Who.
Who?
So.
Not anymore. We got a lot. There's a lot coming.
I'm still in a state of profound distress over this HBO Max thing. Not least because I just think they've been unbelievable jerks to the creator.
Yeah.
As a content creator, I can tell you that it would be really horrible to suddenly find out via a news announcement,
right? Yeah.
that your film is not going to come out in the theaters. I know that Christopher Nolan has spoken a lot about this, and Denis Villeneuve, who's directed.
Oh yeah, no, Dune. He's putting his heels in the ground as well.
You make a film because you want it to be seen on the big screen, and you want it to reach the widest audience possible, and it's not going to reach the widest audience possible on HBO Max. And it's such a cynical decision to be like, well, we'll do this and our subscriber numbers will go up, but I don't think that they will, because I think people are starting to reach sort of like peak streaming. People have like a couple of streaming channels that they want, and like all these theatrical releases won't necessarily draw people to HBO Max, especially at the price point. I think if they cut their price in half, they could probably attract more people.
So you didn't get your 7-day trial?
They don't even have it.
Really?
Yeah, they took out the trial.
Oh, mothers. They knew exactly what was going to go down. I get my 7-day trial. I'm going to watch Wonder Woman 84, and then I'm going to cancel.
First of all, I don't want to pay for another streaming service.
Yeah,
but
so.
Also, I read that the app was super, super buggy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, the day Wonder Woman dropped, like, it crashed.
And that it doesn't work well. A lot of times people talk about login issues. It's like, if you can't figure out how to like stream your product when you have such a high profile release, like you just need to get your stuff together, before you start saying, well, we're going to do our whole, 2021 calendar release on this streaming channel. Disney Plus only costs $7 a month. And people are going to be like, well, do I want HBO Max for $15 a month so I can watch one or two movies that I would have gone to the theater to see? Or do I want to pay for Disney Plus?
Having HBO Max, just because I was grandfathered into it, because I had HBO
right
to begin with. I haven't watched Wonder Woman, so I can't speak for the glitches. But I'm hearing that a lot of people are having difficulties watching it. But I can say that the menus on HBO Max, just paging through, what you normally do with Netflix, you go through a million shows before you settle on what am I going to watch tonight. When you do that with HBO Max, there's a maddening delay of about 3 or 4 seconds. So you go down and nothing happens. And then so you hit the button in frustration,
And then
all of a sudden you go
scrolls
down
like 12
15
pages.
Yeah. So I can say, yes, I am not happy with the menu selection, the way that works on HBO Max. I watched a couple of things without issues once it started. But yeah, I see that there's a frustrating lag time in what you're pressing and what actually happens on the screen.
I mean, I just think that they need to, like, if you're going to try to launch a major streaming service and charge what they're charging, the price really offends me more than anything. Have you noticed? The price is offensive. $15 a month is a lot to ask. Netflix costs $15 a month, but Netflix has a billion things on it. You know, like just the content, there's no comparison.
So pay now and we'll just back end content.
Yeah.
That's basically their motto.
I think that they should, like, think about when Netflix first started streaming. The price was much, much lower, right? Over time, they've raised it.
Oh, yeah. They probably made more money, renting out discs than streaming. And then in the last 10 years, I think streaming has taken over, obviously. But
right. And, like, Disney Plus, like I said, only costs like $7. If you get something like Apple TV Plus, that's $5 a month. If you get CBS All Access, I don't know, we don't have it, but I think it's less than $10.
Peacock is free.
What is free?
Peacock, which is the NBC streaming.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, in terms of cost, like, they put the price point really high. I think that's going to be a limiter on how many people choose to go to that service.
So hopefully we'll review all these movies in 2021, and we won't have to wait until 2022 to see them. Christina, will you tell us what's on our slate for next week?
Yes, please tell me.
You're going to be watching Seven Samurai, directed by...
I just watched Magnificent Seven instead?
No, you may not.
Sorry.
Now, Christina...
You can't watch Bug's Life either.
This is a standalone 5-bucket episode next week.
Yes. And I'm obviously very excited for this. You guys need to get yourselves together and plan accordingly because this is a 4-hour movie.
Round it up, right? So it is.
No,
it's like three.
It's about it's like with the intermission, it's 4 hours.
Fast forward to the intermission.
Now I have seen this before, so.
Oh yes,
yeah,
absolutely. I think.
But it's been a long time, so I'm looking forward to watching it again.
And I'm just going to be full of facts. So
we will just sit back and we will let you flow.
Yeah, I saw this actually in the movie theater, which is amazing.
In the 1950s and during its initial run.
Nice. In the initial run.
I saw it 14 years ago.
I don't want to get too far into it because we'll be talking about it next week. But was this in Chicago at the Music Box?
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Of course it was. And it was a double feature with Yojimbo.
Oof,
so you can just imagine like the state I was in.
That is a 6-hour ordeal right there.
But
probably longer than that.
And I was pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant.
Oh. What are those seats like at that time?
They're
what were the seats like?
They're still not that comfortable. They still have very old seats in there. But it was just so great to see those two films on the big screen.
So yeah, next week, Seven Samurai, an acknowledged classic from any corner of filmdom. And we are finally covering it here on TMI. So thanks for coming back in 2021. And,
yes, thank you.
Enduring our rewind episodes, and we're finally back this week with a new one.
And for all of you that thought that they were new episodes, thank you. We do have like 150 plus episodes in our catalog. So, all right.
So thanks,
as always,
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, tmiconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Peacock is free.
What is free?
Peacock. That was funny.